So it is official, Conor McGregor will finally be fighting Michael Chandler. I'm really glad to be finally getting this news. I mean, it has been very clear. The UFC has been icing Conor. They wanted him to sign a new contract. They want him to sign an 8-fight deal, hopefully have him retire 3 to 4 fights down the line. And now all of a sudden, he cannot go fight for other promotions. He's not allowed to box. He's not allowed to do anything outside of the UFC. That's what they wanted. Conor, from the get-go, has been saying, I want to come back. I want to be fighting. That's what he's always been saying for the past couple years. But a month ago, someone asked Dana White about Conor's return, and of course, Dana just kind of waffled around the question.
With regard to Conor McGregor, what is the holdup with his return?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, the Ultimate Fighter was over back in August, and I can't imagine the plan was for him to be out as long as he's been.
Well, the first problem was that he broke that shin bone. He was recovering from that. That was one of the reasons we had it on. The other problem is he's rich.
And how does that present an issue to you with negotiations?
What do you mean?
Well, I'll ask, does Conor McGregor...
Conor McGregor doesn't need money.
So are we at a point here where Conor McGregor may never fight for the UFC? Can you say that?
If you had loads of money, would you be sitting here right now asking me this question?
No.
No, you would not.
First of all, he broke his leg. He broke his leg over 3 years ago now. I mean, Anderson Silva came back 11 months after he completely snapped his shin in half. I mean, for Christ's sake, Conor was on The Ultimate Fighter sparring and grappling with his guys and looking pretty good. So obviously that had nothing to do with it. And then he goes, oh, well, Conor's rich. Would you want to come back if you were as rich as Conor? But Conor has been telling us nonstop he wants to come back. Conor's coach, John Kavanagh, has been saying the exact same thing. And look, maybe I can stretch my imagination to say Conor is just completely BSing and is just saying this to stay in the limelight. But the way Dana just so vaguely answered the question, he broke his leg, and, he's rich, and, I think they were icing Conor out. I think Dana was trying to ice him out, get him to sign a big new deal. This whole he's rich argument isn't new. He made $100 million fighting Floyd Mayweather and then immediately jumped in there against Khabib, the most nightmarish matchup Conor could have taken. But now all of a sudden, he's rich. He's been rich. He was staying in a $10 million mansion in the lead up to the Chad Mendes fight. It is not new that Conor has money, enough of it that he never has to fight again. It's been that way for years. But here we are. He is fighting Michael Chandler, and the real reason I am so excited for this fight is because this will be the fight where we finally see if Conor still has it or not. Ever since the Khabib fight, the narrative started that Conor's washed. And I'm sure as many of you know, I always thought that was so stupid. When Conor first came to the UFC, all the casuals loved him and all the hardcore fans hated him, and now it's flip-flopped. It's like the cool thing to do to be like, oh yeah, Conor's washed, he's not as good anymore. But when you actually ask those people, well can you explain to us why he's washed? What about his performances tell you he's not as good anymore? The answer you're going to get is, well, he used to win, and he lost. He lost to Khabib. And then he lost to Dustin Poirier. So, clearly, he if he wasn't washed, he would have won, right? Just absolute Lucas Tracy levels of analysis there. But here is the fact of the matter. Every time a fighter loses, there's always reasons why they lost. And in order to break down Conor versus Chandler, we're going to look at those Poirier fights, and we're going to find those exact reasons. But because Conor is so popular, because he is so well known, that means that everybody has an opinion about him. And when you get that large of a sample size, of course, the far majority of those people aren't really in the know. So the opinions end up being along the lines of, oh, Conor lost to Dustin Poirier? The only logical solution is he is now not as good as he was before. That's the only thing I can think of to why he lost. And because humans have evolved to be very social creatures who love to be accepted into a group, next thing you know, everybody has that opinion. Well, I'm here to tell you this right now. Conor McGregor has never had a fight where he has shown to not be in his prime anymore. He never ever has. And skill for skill, he should, big emphasis on the word should, destroy Michael Chandler. But like I said, this is where we're really going to find out. He's been out for a few years. This is his first fight after that horrific leg break. So if he's truly washed, this is going to be the fight that tells us that. But when you look back at the Dustin Poirier fights, for one, just purely on paper, Dustin is a very high-level boxer. He's very durable. Now, I wouldn't say he has really good cardio, but he can 100% grind out 5 rounds. So just looking purely at skill set, you can understand why that may give someone like Conor McGregor some troubles. But then you look at the actual fight, and the biggest variable to that fight was Conor switched up his style a lot. And it wasn't just that he used a boxing stance. Of course, with the calf kicks, that played a huge role. But the big change Conor made is he switched from being a counter puncher to a pressure fighter. You see, Conor was always known for his power, a lot more at 145 than 155, but still, the thing that made Conor so good was his ability to find counters. His ability to read his opponent coming in, slipping their shots, and landing accurate, devastating counters. But you look at that second Dustin Poirier fight, it immediately opens up, and Conor is marching forward trying to land. And the first significant strike that lands in that fight is Dustin Poirier's check hook off Conor McGregor overextending trying to land. Of course, because of Conor's low boxing stance with all that weight on his front leg, the calf kick played a huge role in that fight. But this is an aspect that I don't think enough people talk about. The takedown Dustin got early on in that first round came because Conor overextended with a right hand and Dustin ducks underneath it, getting deep on the shot. And it kept happening throughout that fight. Conor moving in trying to land, Dustin kept finding those counters. Now, of course, Conor was still able to land some of his own shots, and he was even able to hurt Poirier a little bit. But traditionally, this kind of style isn't how Conor fights, and it's definitely not when he's at his best. Conor McGregor's best attribute was his distance management. It was something that Mighty Mouse gave him a lot of praise for back in the day. His ability to slide in and out of range, being just on the outside, ready to make you pay whenever you entered into range. When he is doing that, he is at his best. And the perfect example of this was his fight with Eddie Alvarez. Conor was never rushing in trying to create shots. He hung on the outside, threw a lot of teeps, and every time Alvarez came in winging shots, Conor slipped just out of range and was making him pay every single time. Eddie tried to use his wrestling, but he was having such a hard time closing the distance, he had to shoot from the outside, and Conor was ready for it every single time. And you look at Michael Chandler's last fight against Dustin Poirier, and you see the way he would just sit down and wing these crazy hooks in succession. This should not be up for debate at all, but that style that Conor used against Eddie Alvarez, the thing that made him so good, is tailor-made for someone like Michael Chandler. To a T. I do not think that requires a super in-depth breakdown to show. Conor's going to have the height and the reach advantage. If Michael Chandler fights in this fight like he has in every single other fight he has ever had, which means he's going to be marching into the pocket and just sitting down on every single shot he throws with everything he's got, then Conor should see it all coming and just be finding counter after counter after counter. Despite the change in style against Poirier, Conor was still finding his opportunities to slip where counters were there. But now the only question that remains is, has Conor diminished? Is he not the same as he was before? Again, when you look at his fights with Khabib and Dustin Poirier, there were some stylistical issues there. Some game plan choices that I thought were very, very poor. But as far as Conor physically, was he still in his prime? Was he moving as fast as he was before? Was he still hitting as hard as he was before? All of that was a yes. For people who try to make the claim that Conor was not in his prime for those fights, I mean, they're crazy. Khabib and Dustin are really, really fucking good. It's just that simple. But everything Conor has gone through from that last Dustin Poirier fight till now, it's possible he's really not the same anymore. He's not going to be moving as fast or as fluid. His reactions aren't there anymore. His shots aren't landing with the same kind of power. That is all possible. But we have not seen that yet from Conor. So, This is the fight where we're finally going to learn, is Conor McGregor washed?